we are live on Facebook, and it is 9:04, so we should go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to 1 Million Cups May edition. I'm Evan. I'm one of the community organizers, along with Susan, Brent, Jeff, Jessica, and Stacy. And so, if you know one of us, you know how to one day become a speaker. And we'd love to have you. At some point in the future, but we thank you for joining us. I'm excited about the two speakers that we have today. We've got Taylor Doe with NoteBird and Bob Gay with OTOS. And if you haven't been to 1 Million Cups, typically how this runs, we've got about a 10-minute presentation followed by some Q&A. We definitely invite audience participation. And we will also be giving away, I think, up to 4 gift cards today from 2 sponsors. We've got Rack 59, Brent's holding up the gift card. And then we've got Scott Smith with Cox Business, who's also got 2 gift cards for donuts and coffee. So be listening to Taylor and Bob's presentations, picking up on things like dates or names or first customers, things like that. But we really want to support them and engage with them. And so thought that would be a fun way to take care of that. So 1 Million Cups is a national event that's organized by the Kauffman Foundation. And it's really based around the theory that entrepreneurs build relationships with their communities over 1 million cups of coffee around the world. And so great chance to come out and support the community of Oklahoma City entrepreneurs. We typically meet the second Wednesday of every month from 9 to 10 virtually. And I know that there's been some chatter among the organizing team about getting back to meeting in person. And so be looking for communication about that. Kind of we'll be gauging everybody's level of comfort with COVID and things like that. So for one, I'm excited for, one day getting back in person, but it's been pretty great over Zoom. So Taylor is going to be going first today. I will hand it over to Taylor to start sharing his presentation, and just don't be shy about asking questions as soon as he finishes. So Taylor.
Thanks, Evan. Can you guys see this okay? Awesome. Well, cool. My name is Taylor Doe. My friends and family call me Tito, so I answer to that as well. I got my Whataburger drink here. So I am ready to go. But before we kind of jump into the business, I want to give you a little bit of the heart behind what I do and even the business in general. And that starts with kind of a deep family legacy of caring for others. And so both on my mom and dad's side, my grandfathers were pastors, and they pastored small churches and cared for their people deeply. One of my grandfathers was a professor for a long time and cared for his students deeply. My mom just retired as a doctor, and she cared for her patients deeply. And then my father, he cares for our neighbors and our community up in Bartlesville in deep and unique ways. And so that's just kind of been built into me. I've been in that environment for a long time of just kind of this idea of constantly caring for others. And that manifests itself in many ways over the years. And one way that is in college, I started an organization called Reach Ministries. And so it was just a student group, some of my friends, and I wanted to serve people in unique ways. One of those ways on the screen, as you can see, is a senior citizen prom that we hosted every year. And so we'd go to an assisted living home and just throw a party pretty much. So we would play the best hits of the 50s and 60s. We would dance. We would crown a senior prom king and queen here. And it was just a blast. And it was a way for us to really, really care for that community. And what spurred out of Reach was kind of a movement called Fast Food Valentines. And that is where we would go buy a whole bunch of chocolate, a whole bunch of cards, a whole bunch of roses, and we would deliver them to the ladies who were working at fast food restaurants on Valentine's Day. And so that's actually still going today. Some of my mentees and some of my nephews now have taken it over. And so we rent tuxedos, we rent a limo, we kind of do it up big to be able to, care for those people, those women on Valentine's Day. And so from that, doing that in college and some existing relationships I had the opportunity to work at an oil company in Oklahoma City right after college. And so my job description was kind of, hey, we want you to care for the community as well as care for our employees. And so half of my job, I got to work in schools in Northeast Oklahoma City, where I got to care for kids. I got to care for teachers and our community partners. And then the other half was to care for our employees at the company. And so the CEO at the time said, hey, I want my employees to feel cared for when they're at work, but also outside of work. And so I was responsible for sending baby baskets to employees who just had a baby, or sending flowers and food to employees who had lost a loved one. I did a lot of handwritten cards. I was on the phone providing resources and different connections to different employees. And what I quickly realized was that people feel genuinely cared for when you remember the details in their lives. And so at that time, we probably had 12 or 1,300 employees. Every week I was in front of probably 1,300 to 1,500 students. So I just had a lot of people in my ecosystem that I wanted to genuinely care for. And so I needed a tool to help me kind of remember those details. And so I tried everything to stay organized, from an Excel spreadsheet to a Word doc to Evernote. And they all kind of seemed to kind of fall short. I tried different CRMs and nothing seemed to work. So I reached out to some of my clergy friends and said, hey, what are you guys doing to kind of stay organized when caring for your people? That's kind of in your job description. And they came back and said, hey, we have this pastoral care spreadsheet we use. We kind of have this group text that's going. We have email threads, but nothing really, it's just kind of frustrating. And so in that moment, that's when I realized I wanted to create a product that helped organizations care for their people and stay on the same page. And so that kind of led me to that business idea to create a software, but I do not know how to code. So that's a problem. So I needed to find a co-founder, and I didn't actually have to look that far because my co-founder was my brother. So I went to my brother. This is Chris over here on the left-hand side. This is him in the early days on our Mac that our parents had in the house. So he's coding and gaming away. And then this is us as Aladdin. Back in the 90s, we were Disney babies. So we grew up watching Disney movies. Aladdin was one of our top favorites. So we had the CD that we would play on repeat and kind of dance around the living room in our Aladdin outfits. And then if you can't tell, this is a more recent photo of us at one of our favorite places, Chick-fil-A, eating a bunch of nuggets together. So I feel very fortunate that I get to work with my brother every day. He's one of the smartest people I know, both with technology and just kind of in life in general. So we have a lot of fun working on the business together. But I came to him with this idea several years ago about creating this tool. He said yes. And so he built the first product called Care Notebook. And I'll kind of get into the features in just a second. But this was kind of the tool we wanted to build to help organizations care for their people. And so here's kind of a timeline of how things went down. And so in 2014, Chris quit his job and built Care Notebook in about 3 months, and then went back to work. He actually moved out to Los Angeles to work for a really great company as a creative director. And I loved my job working at the company here in Oklahoma City. So we launched Care Notebook and just kind of let it out there. We didn't advertise. People somehow found us on the internet, started signing up in doing that. And it was just kind of a side project for us, you could say. And we let that kind of sit out there for 3 years. People kept signing up. And then in 2017, I decided I wanted to go full time with Care Notebook. Chris was still in Los Angeles and didn't really have the capacity to kind of start and build this himself. So we hired a really small development team. And as you can see here by the flames, it was a complete dumpster fire. So it did not work out well. We weren't able to provide the product to our customers that we felt comfortable with. And so we're kind of back at square one. And I have a ton of app ideas. So we kind of started thinking about different tools that we could build. We decided not to actually do any of those and revisited Care Notebook. And we said, hey, we have a tribe of people who really love our first product, our MVP. They've asked for a few features. So let's think about doing that again. And so Chris moved back to Tulsa, and we decided to build Care Notebook 2.0 is what we called it. We came up with a new name. We did a brand refresh and built on a completely new platform. And that's where NoteBird was birthed. So we kind of think of NoteBird as version 2.0 of the original product that we had. And so in January of last year of 2020, we launched NoteBird. We moved all of our customers, existing customers, from Care Notebook over to NoteBird and shut Care Notebook down completely. And so NoteBird is kind of the one main focus right now for us. And so I wanted to walk you through just a high level overview of what NoteBird is. And it's kind of a very lightweight CRM or relationship management tool. And so you can make care updates. So anytime you engage with one of your people, you can take notes on the details of the conversation, where you were, anything that you kind of want to remember and stay organized in a profile. You can create follow-up tasks and even life milestones, kind of big life events that happen in the lives of your people that you want to remember. And it keeps people from falling through the cracks that way. We recently launched our care reports feature that we're really excited about. Our existing customer base has never really had this capability to run kind of instant care reports, to be able to see all of the care interactions that they've been having with their people and kind of give them a really great pulse on that aspect of their organization. And then we have an activity feed. We kind of call this your personal care dashboard. And so it brings together all of the updates that are happening in real time. So you know, you and your team, who they're checking in with, what they're talking about. And then we also have our milestones feed. So that's where birthdays and wedding anniversaries and join dates of when they joined your organization all show up in that milestones feed. So you know how and when to check in with your people. And so I want to kind of transition from the feature set into what we're thinking about for the future, kind of where we're heading. We've been putting a lot of thought behind cards and care packages and what it would look like to help organizations kind of streamline that process. So we have all this care data in our software when it comes to birthdays and anniversaries and other kind of big life events that organizations typically check in. Mainly churches are our main customer base right now. They do a lot of cards and different things, and that process is really manual. Someone's running to Walmart, ordering off Amazon, kind of putting together pieces, running specific reports for that. And so what we are thinking about doing is automating that for our customers. So we know how many birthdays are in the system. We could send 30 birthday cards to a church because we know that there's 30 birthdays in May with envelopes already addressed, and they can do those handwritten cards really easily and get those sent out. So we're kind of thinking about what that looks like to provide that feature. Another thing that we built for in the beginning, we just haven't pursued yet, is future markets. So like I said, we are mainly in the kind of religious sector, churches, synagogues, that's kind of built into what they do, is caring for their people. But we're dreaming about what it would look like for school principals to use NoteBird to care for their teachers, and nonprofits to care for their volunteers, and mentoring programs, and business coaches, and even frontline managers who are caring for their frontline associates. And so that's already built into the tool. You have to select the type of organization you are when you sign up for NoteBird, and we kind of customize the setup process for that specific type of organization. But we really haven't marketed towards these markets at this point, but this is kind of where we're heading. And so I appreciate you guys listening to that quick pitch, that quick overview, and would love to answer any questions that you have.
I've got a question for you, Taylor. I was as you were talking about the additional verticals, I was like thinking back in my head, this would be, my wife's a teacher in an elementary school, and I was thinking, man, this would be fantastic for principals, because it's a, how do I say this? It's full of women who want and need attention. And sometimes that can be difficult for principals to try to manage all those different type of relationships, because they have personal lives and all those things that go along with trying to manage people. And I know that my wife, one of her love languages, if you will, is encouraging words and things like that. And so I know it's got to be a challenge with all the different types of personalities, and how do you speak to somebody's need as kind of creating a culture, if you will, in an organization. So I think
Sure.
you guys are headed on the right track. I'm ready to send the app to one of our pastors at my church, because I think he'd really enjoy using it. So I appreciate you sharing this morning.
Yeah, I'll say something quickly to that is, yeah, people feel cared for in different ways. And so I remember walking into certain people's offices and there would be handwritten cards that I'd written to them, posted on their bulletin board or put up on their bookshelf. And I wouldn't say anything about it, but that's just a mental note as I'm kind of checking in on people that's valuable to them. We do have a kind of just a general notes section within a profile to be able to take down and kind of save someone's favorite drink, whether that's from Starbucks or Sonic or anything like that. And so I've used NoteBird when I was working in schools. I would have all of the office staff, their favorite Sonic drinks saved in my NoteBird account. And so occasionally, just randomly on surprise, when people weren't expecting it at all, I would show up with their favorite Sonic drinks on a random Thursday afternoon, knowing that it's been a tough week. And so I have all that information in my NoteBird account to be able to provide that level of care. So yeah, we're definitely thinking about the schools and other verticals. But thanks for bringing that up.
Taylor, I've got a question. So between, I think it was April 2017 and April 2018, when you said things were a dumpster fire with Care Notebook, what sort of things kind of contributed to that? Like, what didn't go well? I feel like that's a story that many entrepreneurs are going to face. And so it could be good for them to hear you kind of talk about that.
Yeah. We had, so Chris didn't have the capability or the capacity then to dedicate as much time. And so we kind of went off a referral to this kind of development group. And just, that was our first time to really work with outside developers. And if you're in tech, you kind of know that it's just kind of hard to judge sometimes. And so we kind of took a chance with that organization, and we just weren't on the same expectation level for a product that we'd want to release to our existing customers. So it just didn't work out. We kind of kept hitting these roadblocks, wanting to see work, kind of the traditional story of just kind of getting put through the ringer. And we just finally had to cut it off and just say, hey, it doesn't look like we're ever going to be able to get to the product that we want. And so that's when we had to cut that tie. It was a tough time. It was hard. We lost a lot of money. And then we kind of felt like we were starting at square one. But that was not a fun period to go through.
I think there's a question from Nate. You know, unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I didn't know if raising the hand had actually, I'm going to lower it there. Awesome. Hey, Taylor, man, this is a really cool tool. So thank you for sharing about it. I love that you kind of buried all the other businesses that you were focused on towards the end, because my mind was spinning with possibilities, kind of like Brent's. I was ready to pass it on to a number of different kind of people. So I also see this with for-profit companies. Retention is a huge deal in a lot of companies, especially in subscription-based models. And this is a great tool to pair with kind of a retention plan. I know a lot of softwares these days, you might have a main platform and then some bolt-ons.
Yep.
Do you have any plans for integrating with any other kinds of software?
Yeah, good question. So we have built 2 integrations so far. Like I said, we are mainly in the church world. And so there's these big church management platforms that are out there. So they already have an existing customer base. They do a lot of different things, from tithing to background checks to child check-in to sending out bulletins and all of that. And so they become kind of this bloated tool, which they're really powerful. But we found that churches and organizations still use an Excel spreadsheet because the notes feature is typically overlooked on those platforms, or you have to press 8 or 9 buttons to make an update. And so we have an integration with one of the biggest platforms in that market called Planning Center, and then connected with one of the CEOs of kind of one of the up and coming ones. They're probably in the top 3 or 4 right now. And so we built an integration and have a partnership with them. And so Planning Center probably has north of 60,000 churches using their platform, and Breeze probably has north of 10,000 churches using their platform. So they can easily integrate with NoteBird. All of their people come into NoteBird, and then they have a really quick way to add notes and kind of stay on the same page using our tool.
Awesome.
Hey, Taylor, I want to springboard off of what Evan's question was about
Yeah.
the dumpster fire.
Yeah.
One of the questions I have for you is related to being a founder that is not a coder. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have great ideas, but they don't know how to take that idea and put it into code.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on some of the either low code or no code tools that are out there for people who have an idea and, they can drag and drop, if you will, and they can follow a flow diagram.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about those tools for people that were in a similar situation? And would a tool like that be helpful to help small teams that are trying to grow the capabilities without having to go out and use an outside firm who then, like you said, it can go awry very quickly. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that I didn't have to do the research into no code just because of my brother. So I don't know much. I just enjoy technology, so I'm familiar with some of the no code platforms. I have some friends who build on it. I think for a lightweight MVP solution that you could test out, depending on what product you're building, no code is probably a great way to start and get that off the ground. I think when it comes to more complex tools, you probably need to validate and then probably extend that build. Once again, I'm not a no code expert at this point, so I don't feel like I can speak directly to that with much expertise. Okay,
now I'll ask the technical question, of course, being in the data center business. Are you guys built on a public cloud platform, and how are you guys built out for your app?
Yeah, we that's a Chris question. So he handles a lot of the development side. He's given me just a quick kind of overview of what I'm supposed to say to people that we copy and paste.
Right.
I will let you know that most of we built a tool for people who are across kind of all tech spectrum. So I think what we kind of pride ourselves on is the simplicity of NoteBird. We have a lot of people who just aren't as comfortable with technology who use our tool. Mm-hmm. And so like our font's a little bit bigger. We've bolded buttons that you're supposed to use. And we've made it so you can make an update in like 2 clicks. Right. And so people stepping out of the hospital for a hospital visit, or people stepping out of a coffee meeting to meet, with another person, being able to make those updates really quickly. And so that's kind of where we're centered.
There was a question in the chat from Derek. I want to make sure we don't miss. Any advice for care connectors who enjoy connecting but despise logging the connection? Or is that something you face? People, I don't know, feel like logging connections is too impersonal, or?
Yeah, so kind of the way I view that is there's kind of 2 schools of thought of saying, hey, you don't really care because you have to log this. And then there's another school of thought of you care enough that you do log it. So I wanted to be when I was at this oil company, I noticed that when someone would lose a loved one on that first year, there would be 18 casseroles that were delivered to the house, right? And we delivered the same casserole. But what I noticed is that the year later, it was kind of crickets. People didn't remember, didn't show up. And I said, I want to be the guy who shows up a year later. And so that's really hard to do just off of memory. You're going to put it in the calendar probably. We just created a tool to be able to help do that. I'm going to be the guy who shows up the next year with a card. I'm going to be making a phone call. I wanted to be that person. And so that's kind of my thought is, hey, I'm willing to spend money on a tool to be able to help me because I don't want to forget this. And so that's that part. The other part is the logging issue. And that's any CRM's problem. Any customer relationship management tool is I have to remember to log this. And so what we've created is the early bird report. And so a lot of the stuff we do has to go around this idea of a bird or flight or different things like that. So our early bird report comes to our users in the morning with those life milestones for that day. So we'll let you know what birthdays and wedding anniversaries and any other custom milestones are happening for that day, because those, we want to bring those people top of mind. And so that's kind of a nice trigger to kind of get into the habit loop. You'll hear people talk about the habit loop of actually making updates and getting used to walking out of the coffee shop and adding an update. Those would be things that we try to do on our side from behind the scenes to kind of trigger those actions to be taken by our users.
Devin, did you have a question for us? Go ahead and unmute yourself there.
I did. Hey, Taylor, I had an observation that I wanted to ask about and just kind of get your thoughts on.
For sure.
And that was like, it seems like, you know, the world of like CRMs and relationship management is saturated, but that's because there's a lot of money in it, obviously. There's a lot of opportunity with different niches, you know, and people who want a specific type of application. But it seems like you've really like solidified kind of your DNA as an organization and really as a person, you know, that kind of flows from you. So could you talk a little bit like, you know, there's obviously temptation to go off in every which direction, which I'm sure is a really difficult to kind of like stay the course. Like even in this conversation, right? Like you're going to get LinkedIn messages from all of us about like, oh, there's all these verticals that you could go to. Let me help you do all this, you know?
Yeah.
But like, it seems to me that you have like a specific, you know, like type of vertical that you want to go down. So like, just as a entrepreneur, can you talk about like that framework of like how you stay the course and kind of like stick to the DNA of what you really wanted to create?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. Our focus is probably on people who are not very tech savvy. So we're not trying to move anyone from a copper CRM to NoteBird. A lot of our users are using Excel spreadsheets. They're writing handwritten notes. I talk to pastors and people who have Post-it notes around their computer. And so we're trying to move those people from kind of stage one of still very manual kind of processes and tracking, because it's happening, and then moving them to our very simple and easy to use tool. I know everyone says that, but we literally say no to a lot of features to keep simplicity kind of number one. So we're very slow at launching a new feature for that reason, because the more complex your tool gets, then the less likely people are to engage. And so we've even kind of shadowed some people at Walmart who are frontline managers, and they do kind of these kind of general check-ins. They're required to do management by walking around, which is kind of a management principle of checking in with your people in a very relational aspect. And that's not being tracked. And, you know, organizations are wanting to track those engagements because they know that's tied to retention. When you ask about your kid's soccer game and how that went, or how your wife's doing because she was, you know, just got a promotion at her job and is now a new VP. You know, it's like those are the things that you want to check in with about with your people. And so there's still a big segment of the market that is still kind of doing that manually. So right now, so we're not trying to steal anyone away from kind of those more complex tools that can do workflows and email, you know, campaigns and all that. We don't do anything. We don't do any of that. We don't even touch that. We are very focused on just kind of that frontline, quick engagement, take notes, moving on to the next thing. I need to be reminded of these people. I want to care for my people, but currently don't have a great way to do it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, Devin. I was thinking about the multi-generational aspect of most churches is that you've got all different kinds of communication styles, from senior pastors that don't want to be tech savvy, that are still using the Post-it notes and writing handwritten letters and things of that nature. How do you incorporate those in so that you have a tool that staff that are multiple personas, if you will, can utilize the tool? You want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think we have people who engage differently with the tool. So there's different roles within, well, I'll just specifically talk about our market that we're currently in the church. There's different roles within a church. So there are some organizations that have a dedicated pastoral care pastor on staff. And so we have a lot of those type roles who are using NoteBird. They're the ones looking for a tool. They're the ones who put into Google pastoral care app and find us. And then there's kind of that next level of pastors who say, I feel overwhelmed. There's been some situations that have come up where I've missed really big things, and my members are frustrated, they're upset, they're hurt, and I don't want that to happen again. And so they find us that way. And then there's people who don't don't even look for technology, but they trust their other pastors. And so there's a lot of pastor groups on Facebook and, hey, what apps are you using? All of those things. And that's where NoteBird kind of gets thrown out there. I'll mention really quick is we kind of think of the kind of, to go back to the second slide, is this legacy of care for organizations. And so typically what happens is when someone leaves the church or leaves an organization, they kind of just walk out the door and all of that institutional care knowledge walks out with them. So we're like, hey, we know Brent cared for a lot of people. We just don't know how, and we don't know where to pick up because he's gone now. And so with NoteBird, we've really thought through that process of when you store those notes in NoteBird and that pastor leaves or that key figure leaves, you can archive them as a user. You get to keep all of their notes and then fill someone in their spot for no additional charge. So that pastor can come in and say, hey, who's been struggling through this life event? Who's been having this chronic pain for a long time that I need to be checking in with? Who's gone through the passing of a loved one recently that really needs care? A lot of pastors are walking in cold turkey to new churches and have none of that information. And I could probably make the argument for frontline managers too, who get promoted or leave the organization, yet they still have their employee base who needs to be cared for, who's yearning to be cared for, and creating that kind of care environment. And they're walking in cold and don't know any of the history that has happened with that set of employees.
Taylor, I want to just take a second and say thank you so much for spending your morning with us and sharing the story of NoteBird. I think the city's better because you're building a business like this in it. And so I want to make sure that I think this was the Q&A was on fire today. And so I know there are probably some that we didn't get to. And so if you've got a question for Taylor, just DM him directly, and we'll make sure that everybody here has, you know, both Taylor and Bob's email after 1 million cups.
Thanks.
But I've got one more question. We love to kind of flip the script at the end and ask our presenters, what can we as a 1 million cups community do for you? And so if there's anything that comes to mind, just let us know, Taylor.
Am I answering that, or that's just?
Yeah, sorry, I wouldn't have, yeah.
Man, good question. And I want to spur the conversation on just being just kind to people. I think we're in a just a state right now in our country of people who aren't listening to other people, who aren't being kind. And I think my whole deal is just kind of to spur that. So not even in the business realm, but just kind of, if anything comes out of today's talk, is care for others, have a position of listening. There's people in your organization who just want to be heard, and you can be that listening ear, and then following up with people is so key. So if anything, that would be one thing today. A challenge is to just look for that person in your organization that you haven't connected to in a while, and really be intentional this week on checking in, whether that's via text or even just a phone call. I think would be awesome. Or
we can all download NoteBird and
or download NoteBird.
I mean, hey,
you can't do that.
No, that's perfect. Thanks again, Taylor, and yeah, stick around.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll have some, trivia questions at the end. But I want to turn it over now to Bob Gay with OTOS, and it's definitely a pivot. We're going to go from talking about care software to finance tools, but equally as excited to hear about what Bob's got for us. So, Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evan. Let me just make sure that my screen share is working. And clear my throat, excuse me, after all this. I'm on my third cup of coffee, so excuse me if I'm a little jittery. And it's not that big of a difference, because what we're talking about is what is already a huge data problem that is getting exponentially bigger as we go through time. So the data curation problem is a big one for pastors, but it's also a big one for everybody else in existence. And the way that it's being dealt with now is more often painful, annoying, and suspicious. And as a result, the application of new technology to that data problem is what I'm up to. And so let me just give you just a brief précis. I was born in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and educated at the University of Saskatchewan, and went to University of Western Ontario with the idea that I was going to get a PhD and go back to Saskatchewan and teach. And so during my master's degree, I discovered big data. The University of Western Ontario had a huge computer, and the biggest data set in the world at that time was something called CanSim, which was a Canadian database of everything that you can possibly imagine. Lumber produced in Prince George, British Columbia would be, you know, a data stream. And so there was this vast data set. And so I developed an algorithm that basically said, let's see if the time series behavior of this data bears any relationship to any price anywhere. And what I discovered was that the data was essentially a noisy mess, and that there was not really anything of value there, until I moved away from big data and started to curate the data and say, well, okay, lumber produced in Prince George is interesting, but how about lumber produced in this province of British Columbia, which is, surprise, surprise, if you linked it up with inventories, is a tremendous predictor of lumber prices. And so I had this little algorithm, and I decided that I wouldn't do a PhD after all, and I went to work on what is Canada's version of Wall Street, Bay Street. And at that time, people were beginning to experiment, certainly in big institutions, beginning to experiment with stock selection and portfolio construction management problems, basically using a cross-sectional, is this cheaper than that kind of comparison. And what I brought in, given my time series kind of experience, was, look, fellas, there were a lot of women as well. There's much, much more information in how things are changing than there is in how things are. And that propelled me in a couple of years to the top ranked quantitative analyst on Wall Street. And I was working with all of the major institutions in the world, helping them to move away from cross-sectional models and introduce dynamics into their decision-making, how things are changing. The problem was that the data is very, very noisy there too. So you got to figure out, how do we make sure that we're comparing things that are apples to apples through time? And that became a bigger problem that I developed a solution for using a machine learning algorithm. So that's where I'll start with my presentation. So let me make sure that we're all talking the same language. Artificial intelligence, of course, we hear about it. There are movies produced about it. There are all kinds of alarm about it. There's where the US supposedly has a global advantage in it, and nobody really knows what it is. Well, what is it? What it isn't is anything that resembles human intelligence. What it is two basic algorithms. One, which is a machine learning algorithm, which basically goes through a training procedure and then takes over for you. And the other one is a neural network algorithm, which basically piles through a pile of data and looks for something useful. Doesn't know what it is, can't explain it, doesn't know why it's there, it just finds it. And they've got very, very serious shortcomings, and they're not new. There's this idea that somehow artificial intelligence is a new technology that's coming along and sweeping the world, and no, none of that's happening. It's the same technology that's been around for 10 or 15 years. All that's happening, it's becoming a little bit more broadly used, and it's being facilitated by the move to the cloud and the expansion of both data and computing capability. And so let's get clear that Otis is a machine learning algorithm that interprets financial statements. So for all intents and purposes, Otis is a robotic financial analyst. And so we've created this thing, we've built this long, long database of US publicly traded companies that allows us to measure all of the corporate metrics that those of us that are engaged in entrepreneurship are going to be familiar with. What's the rate of growth of sales? What's the gross profit margin trend? What's happening with your fixed costs relative to sales? How's your inventory turn? What's going on with your cash flow? And all these kinds of corporate performance kinds of metric things that are very familiar to us as accountants and financial analysts, but as soon as you get out of that realm, people's eyes glaze over very, very quickly. And so what we're up to is to take this and create something that people can actually use. And it's important to understand that it's not a simplification. How do I get this page to change? Sorry, I'm trying to get I would have thought that just there it is. So what we're out to do is to empower people to make decisions in their lives. Financial decisions is where we are now, that generate value and create wealth. And specifically, what we're out to do is to provide an opportunity for Otis to learn about your financial reality and identify opportunities to make and save you money. So that what Otis is doing then is curating all of the financial information. And in the context of Otis's acquired knowledge of your particular set of financial circumstances, Otis will give you decision ideas. Oh, you should be looking at this life insurance policy instead of that one, because Otis is determined that given the fact that you're 28 years old and have 2 kids, you should probably have some life insurance. And so it's an attempt to curate the information similarly from what we heard earlier, only it's doing it in an automated format in response to your actual behavior. And so let me go on and see if I can make it a little bit clearer. So the problem that I was out to deal with when I first envisioned this was a problem related to people's investing. So my communication with my financial advisor doesn't work. I want my guy to be doing things for me, but it's clear that he's not. And I'd like to do it myself, but no easy way exists to bring everything together so that I can make a decision in an informed way. I find this guy contradicts that guy, and there's all this noise out there, and I don't know what's going on. So this is an attempt to curate all of that. And make it to create it in a format that people can actually use. And what I discovered was that people are not there yet. In terms of their financial lives, people are not looking at their investment portfolios typically. Even people who are aging into their retirement are sort of got their fingers crossed that somebody's looking after this somewhere, because goodness knows I'm not. And so what I discovered was that where people really want help and really need engagement is in their own personal financial life, ongoingly. They want to be able to create a budget. I want to have a plan. I want to be monitoring my transactions. I want to be applying all coupons that are available to me. I want to make sure that I have the best deals in all of the products that I choose to purchase, but it just takes too much time and effort to do it. And so the application of the machine learning financial information, financial statement interpretation process allows us to customize all of that and create it as kind of an ongoing personal relationship with your personal AI. And so what I came to realize after a couple of years of research is really what people want is more in control and confidence around their personal finances. And so that's what that's where we're pivoting, if you like, towards more of a personal AI rather than a financial AI. So let me talk a little bit about that. So your personal artificial intelligence learns about your financial reality from basically all of your financial accounts. So your transaction accounts, your investing account, your savings account, and how those accounts change and behave through time provides information about your financial reality, about your preferences, and all kinds of information about you. And it provides an opportunity for Otis to see every opportunity for you to save money. But it also provides you with opportunities to make money. So applies coupons, discounts, any kind of promotions that are available. More importantly, it allows you to be informed and confident, and allows you to visualize your financial reality in a way that's appealing to you. So let me show you what I have so far. So we take all these financial statements, and these are going to be familiar to most of you. You're going to have line items that describe various kinds of data points, and they're typically shown this year and compared against last year, and they stack up. They're typically for U.S. companies reported once every 13 weeks, so that goes back every 13 weeks, and to try to figure that out is going to be a spreadsheet nightmare. And I can tell you that even a spreadsheet is not going to do a very good job of that because of the comparability problem. And so what Otis does is it comes in, reads every line item, extracts the data value from that line item, and then works it into the data record in a way that maintains the consistency of the company and provides that data. Well, then how do we translate the data into something that we can actually use? Well, nothing speaks more powerfully than an image. And so what we've done is to create, and this is just a prototype, what I call the greenhouse narrative. And the greenhouse narrative is basically a set of plants in a pot, where whether the plant is growing or shrinking, whether it's wilting or green, whether the shape of the pot is attractive or wobbly looking, conveys information about whether or not the company is good or bad, whether or not the performance metrics are getting better or worse. And the dynamics of the image, that is how the image is changing, gives you information about how the attributes of your particular investment are changing over time. So it allows in a convenient way for us to assemble an investing strategy that has a set of attributes that are more likely to generate a positive result. And it also makes sure that we hear about any circumstances under which a change should be made. Now, those changes can be automated, so it becomes a little bit more of a more sophisticated robo-advisor under that circumstance, or you can be prompted with them. So people that are actively involved in their investment decision-making, Otis learns about that and begins to contribute ideas to your strategy, both new things to buy and new things to sell. Of course, those are relatively few investors. Most of us are investing in some kind of a retirement plan with our employer, and if we look at it once a year, that will be kind of what we do. And we're asked to make an allocation decision and decide which investment portfolios we should have big positions in, which we should have small positions in, and we look at that and say, I have no idea. And so as a result, you end up with a default. And the default is typically related to your age. So if you're young, you have a big equity portfolio and a small bond portfolio. If you're old, you'll have a small equity portfolio and a big bond portfolio. And what? We're going to allocate we're going to dedicate our future and allocate our investments on the basis of how old we are? That's complete nonsense. And so what Otis does is provide you with an opportunity to look at the attributes of your various investments and say, oh, gee, that one looks a heck of a lot better than this one, and make a choice on that basis, okay? So there's all kinds of exciting stuff going on right now, not only in Oklahoma, but more broadly. And that is that we're more used to connecting our financial accounts to a third-party app now, right? We got our bank account connected up here or there, and our brokerage accounts connected to this guy and that guy. And so it's, you know, a little bit more, people are feeling more comfortable. The other big change, which is really exciting, is the availability of fractional shares, because we're all paying a fee for somebody to manage this portfolio that they never change. And so we might scratch our head and say, why are we paying an ongoing fee for a single service? It's like paying your real estate agent for the rest of your life after he sells your house. I mean, it makes no sense. And so to provide an opportunity for people to replicate has always been a challenge, because to replicate the S&P 500, when one stock costs $3,000, you know, you're going to have a lot of money involved. Whereas to do it with a $100,000 or so portfolio requires fractional shares. And that's what's so exciting about that recent availability. There's a more common desire for people to impose or to not impose necessarily, that's a statistical word, but to make their decisions in the context of their values. And so as a result, there's this huge trend over the last couple of years for some nonsense called ESG. And so all I need to do is to put together a group of companies that I claim are ESG, and I'm going to go out and charge you a fee to do nothing with that population of stocks. It makes no sense. People want to do it themselves. And we're creating a community of people who have these kinds of concerns, environmental concerns, sustainability concerns, or corporate government concerns, that they can institute into their portfolio and share information about, and you know, it's kind of a social network kind of thing. We'll get back to that in a second. But the other interesting thing that's happened recently is the broader availability of digital coupons, and people are still not redeeming them. There's still billions and billions of dollars in coupon value that's left on the table, and Otis will make sure that that gets taken care of. And then finally, the pandemic. You know, more people are thinking about entrepreneurship. And one of the things that gets in the way of people taking that step in my conversations is, oh my God, now how am I going to lay after the books? And so Otis begins with the company and learns the company's financial position and makes those kinds of contributions. Now, the greenhouse narrative is only one of a lot of digital visuals that people use in their lives that lend themselves to the gamification of financial data. My favorite is the fantasy sports. I love the idea of having my portfolio dance around a football field and advance if it's performed well that day and push back if it's, anyway, I think that's a great idea. But there's SimCity and Civilization. The biggest video game in the world is Happy Farm, which has got hundreds and hundreds of millions of Chinese users. And what I'm interested in about that, of course, is that the visual is independent of language. So you can take this financial statement analysis and translate it into some boring research report, which only the English could read, or likely, unless they had it translated, which is not very common. And so you get the idea that this becomes kind of a global means by which people can access the data. I'm just going to skip over the timeline. Just suffice it to say, I've been at this a very long time. And it's the thing about machine learning, right, is the thing needs to be taught. And so the process of teaching really never goes away. But I cover 1,800 US companies. I cover more, I create a better data set than any major data provider in the world. And every other data provider out there employs 80 to 100 people. I'm doing it myself. And so that gives you the idea of the power of machine learning, but there's training involved. It takes time. So what does Otis do now? Well, Otis will support you in creating an investment strategy. It will monitor your investment strategy over time and make sure that you get any ideas that are related to your strategy, things that you should be selling or buying. It adapts to your behavior. So if you're a day trader, Otis will start to show you day trading ideas. If you only look at your portfolio once a year and make an allocation decision, Otis will keep on track of your allocation decision. So it's an intent to create a relationship with the machine, and the possibility to do that at the personal level is I think tremendously exciting. And what it will do in the future is get more involved with your ongoing financial life. So it will make sure, again, all the coupons and such, but it'll maintain your general ledger. That's the application of the machine learning technology that I've used to build this database for US companies, is that it creates your general ledger. From your general ledger, then all other things evolve: your budget, your plan, your spending behavior, creates your financial statements, does your taxes, all this kind of stuff that evolves from its knowledge and curation of your general ledger. Okay, the other thing it will do is that it will monitor your digital risks and make sure that you're not being scammed. It'll make sure that your credit, your scores are all up to snuff, and if they're not, it will institute remediation without you even being involved. It will just reorganize your transactions in order to improve your credit score. And then finally, and most importantly, maintains that relationship where you become dependent, not dependent, maybe another statistical word, but you become related to your financial life through the personal AI that Otis is. So what am I here for? I'm going to leave this up to the question period if people care about the arduous journey that I've gone on to make it here. But the wonderful thing about AI is that it will grow exponentially from a small group. And so what I'm out to create in Oklahoma City is a group of users. They can be contributing users, they can be participating users, there'll be all kinds of users. So let me talk about the three opportunities that I'm creating. The first is to be an investment management client, and I'm growing Otis as a personal artificial intelligence capability out of an investment management firm, and I'm doing that for a very specific reason, and it has to do with trust. I'm sure the trust question is going to come up later on, so I won't get into it now, but having a foundation of trust, having structural trust is very important to sustaining that trust. And so that's why I'm financing the thing the way I am. And so if you would like to be an investment management client, if you've got your, if you're just getting your access to your 401k, or if your retirement plan sitting out there causing you to lose sleep at night, come and be a client, and we'll get all that fixed up. Register at otis.io. I'll give you the upgrade. I will support you in creating and implementing a strategy, either your current strategy or a fantasy strategy, or it could be just your 401k or whatever it looks like. I'll get you that implemented, and then Otis will support you to manage it over time. And then register again at Otis and be a beta user for the artificial intelligence application to your personal financial statement. I'm committed to creating opportunities for people to make and save money everywhere, including participating on the platform. So again, I'll leave this for the question, but there are many opportunities for people to create, to contribute content to the platform that can be demonstrated and measured as valuable, and then paid for by other users. So there's a bit of a business model out there related to that too. But I think I must have gone over my time by now. So let me stop there and see whether or not I have any questions.
Perfect. Bob, thank you so much for that awesome presentation. And I can't wait to sign up and understand more about how this could be, personally applicable. We probably have time for one question. And then it looks like you've already kind of made the ask of the 1 Million Cups community, and so we can spare that. So does anybody have a big question for Bob?
I've got a quick question. I'll be the tech guy. Bob, do you guys have built this in a machine learning algorithm? Are you building this on the cloud in like a GCP Google Cloud platform and its AI subset, or where are you guys running your algorithm?
No, we're on the Amazon cloud.
Okay.
And we're running a compiler that I've used all the way since graduate school, which is a very old and pretty obscure compiler developed by IBM in the 60s called APL. And APL is an unbelievably powerful language for rotating multidimensional matrices, and that's mostly what we're doing in terms of searching for insights and looking for how things are changing through time. We're rotating these multidimensional matrices. And just an indication of how long this has been around, I was awarded one of the original patents in machine learning in 2002, and it has to do with these multidimensional matrices and how they relate to each other across each dimension. So they become kind of a corporate accounting synapse, if you like.
Brent, that was a zinger.
Is everybody else sort of baffled over what have I done now? I must have generated a question or two out there.
One more question. Who's got it?
Oh, so the one thing that I should point out is that my investment and management clients receive, as a part of their fee, an equity interest in the underlying fintech. And so one of the reasons why I'm able to live with myself charging people a fee is, number one, I provide an ongoing service, so that's kind of useful. But the other thing is that there's this tremendous payoff. I'm intending to make this into a huge company. The revenue model that we didn't get into too much detail of, but that drives this, threatens the business models of many industries, certainly the financial services industry. Before I'm gone, I want to make fee-based investment management dead. It's been ripping people off for way too long.
I got a question for you, Robert, real
Please.
quick, and this hopefully you won't go down too much of a rabbit hole, but let's say this takes off and becomes a massive company, like I hope it does for you. We've seen the kind of influence that a large group of investors can have with meme stocks and kind of the rise of the Reddit population. If your machine learning algorithms are they going to make a similar advisement to a subset of people that will then increase the volatility of the market in that similar way, or how do you see that affecting it, if at all?
Well, the first thing to keep in mind is that you're dealing with a very, very broad set of investing preferences, right? So you've focused on a very, very narrow investing preference, which is very high risk, but hopefully very high return investing. Well, as soon as Otis discovers that that's what you're up to, it will say, well, okay, we've already seen a couple of these meme stocks perform very, very well. Let's see if we can find other kinds of stocks that haven't performed quite so well yet that have the same set of attributes. And what was interesting about the meme stocks, of course, is that they were being priced for bankruptcy. And none of them are cash flow positive. They're all insolvent. They're all just sort of hanging on the whim of their bondholders for their very existence, and as a result, traded at astonishingly depressed prices. Well, if you want to implement a depressed share buying strategy, Otis is very, very capable of helping you to do that. In fact, Otis can help you to stay away from the ones that are going to go bankrupt and focus on the ones that are more likely to perform well. So. Let's just look at one of the meme stocks that you were talking about. What I'm trying to think about which one it was. It was GameStop, right?
GameStop, that's right.
I can't even remember the ticker symbol now. I should have had that.
GME.
GME.
GameStop. Well, there it is. Well, look at that.
There it is.
So there's the performance of the share price of GameStop from 2009 until 2021. So you can see that starting in about 2010, this company began this astonishingly steep downtrend, losing basically 100% of its value and bouncing around here back in 2020, late 19, early part of the last year, sort of volatile but not moving anywhere, and then takes off with this huge, huge advance. Well, what was interesting is that during this period, what I call the dominant factor, which is the one that's the most highly related to the price, was ringing a buy bell. Now, none of my clients bought it because at this point the company was cash flow negative. But we're able to see very, very clearly that this unusually depressed company is either going to disappear because it's down by 90%, or something pretty exciting is going to happen with it. And of course, we got the pretty exciting stuff. But people respond to evidence. So as soon as this begins to happen, of course, everybody piles in. And the result is that a very large number of people get the stock here because, oh my God, it can't stop going down. And then, of course, they get the education. So better to look for companies that have this kind of attribute now. And that's what Otis does well. Sorry to be long-winded, but there you go.
Nate, that was a great question. I know we've had a couple of people drop off. Still want to make sure we get to our trivia question, and we'll do one apiece in the interest of time. So just like Taylor said, people feel genuinely cared for when you remember the details in their lives. And so we've got a detail from each of our presenters and a gift card. So get your typing fingers ready, and the first person to type the correct answer in the chat will win a gift card. So looking back at Taylor's presentation, when was his fast food Valentine's initiative launched? Looking for a year, not necessarily a specific date. Jamie struck first, not quite right. About a decade behind, if that gives anybody a hint. Nate's close, maybe a little overzealous. If somebody will split the difference, I'll give you a gift card.
May have to try a different question.
May have to try a different question. Jamie got the answer. Jamie, drop your email in the chat and we'll get you a gift card. And then a question from Bob's presentation. So what is Canada's version of Wall Street where Bob worked? Hey, Jenny Edwards with the gift card. Thanks, Jenny. I know we went over on time, but I really appreciate all of you guys showing up to support these two entrepreneurs building companies in Oklahoma City. Join us every week or every month on the second Wednesday of the week for 1 Million Cups. Hope to be meeting again soon in person. And especially thank you to Taylor and Bob for some awesome, enlightening presentations. We are thankful to have you guys here in Oklahoma City. And look forward to supporting you however we can in the future. So have a great week, everybody. Be kind to one another and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.